what we were dealing with. And to make matters worse, my legs were continuing to cramp up. This is not good, I was thinking to myself. I mentioned to Kira that my legs were cramping and I just need a second, no problem, just need a second. I tried playing it off and keeping the pain to myself as I kept struggling each step up this steep, snow-covered mountain. If you've listened to this podcast before, you're very familiar with my buddy Josh, who I often hike with, and I remember over this past summer, he experienced the same thing going up Pyramid, coincidentally. The same cramping, and he's an avid hiker himself. Kira and I kept hiking up, and I kept having to stop every so often. And she always stayed a few feet behind me, so when I inevitably slide down the mountain, I'm not a human avalanche taking her down the entire mountain. Smart move. And while we were having a nice conversation during the hike, the whole time in my head I was thinking, okay, I've never bailed on a hike, but I'm cramping up like I've never experienced, and I'm not even at Pyramid yet. What is going on here? I kept thinking of how I can get back down if I need to bail. So I was picturing the map in my head and thought, okay, well, I could turn around right now and go back directly how we came, or I could demand more from my mind and my body and get to the top of Pyramid, and then push it over to Gothics, the 0.4 miles, and if I need to drop off after that, I'll take the Beaver Meadow Trail down Gothics, back to the Lake Road, and then back to my car. So I opted for the second option, simply because it's just what I chose to do. Hiking in general, especially winter hiking, is definitely a sport where you need to know your own limits and boundaries. But it's also a sport where pushing yourself to do better is a must as well. However, with that said, knowing when it's time to turn around is important because it's never worth putting yourself in harm's way simply to summit a peak and risk your life, the lives of others, or the need for a search and rescue. And with this in mind, I know my body and what I can do and what I can't do, and I knew I could make it up to Pyramid, and then I would use the trip from Pyramid to Gothics to determine if I was going to drop off the hike. Of course, I didn't mention this struggle to anyone other than Kira, who knew I was tired and cramping a little, but she definitely didn't know the extent of what was going on, as I tried to hide it, but it was easily the worst that I've ever felt hiking. Thank God for Jonathan and Brian breaking the trail the best they could for us and making it a little bit easier for us than it was for them. Props to both of you dudes. But we kept pushing, slipping, climbing, sliding, cursing up a storm in my head, thinking to myself, what a strange hobby this is. And then soon we caught back up with Jonathan, who quickly kept going on up the trail, of course, and then was out of sight moments later. So the climb continued. We were exactly halfway up Pyramid when we ran into Jonathan again. And it was daytime at this point and the sun had risen. Jonathan got the photos he was looking for from an outlook off of Pyramid, and Kira and I were both able to enjoy the sunrise moment from a view off Pyramid through a nice opening in the trees, so we got pretty lucky at that point. So while we weren't on the summit of Gothics, or even the second mountain of the day for the sunrise, due to the slow hiking conditions, we still got to enjoy it from the mountains. It was bright red and amazing. I also feel this was still a successful sunrise hike since we already summited a high peak well before the sun came up, so all in all, it was good. The crampy quads, however, were not good and just didn't go anywhere. So I kept fighting through it and pushing forward little by little, and then I was at the summit. Thank God. We made it up Pyramid at 7:30 a.m., standing 4,578 feet elevation. Not an official high peak, but a tall, demanding mountain nonetheless, and the second of 6 on the day. It is 7:30. We made it up to the top of Pyramid, and it was probably the hardest hiking I've ever done in my life.
Hardest hiking I've ever done.
Yes. Jonathan and Brian broke trail, but let's just say I had a hellish time getting up here. Props to Kira for listening to me complain the whole time. Every single step, I would just slide down every single freaking step. So annoying. However, I'm up here on top of Pyramid now, which is, in my opinion, one of the best views in the high peaks. And seeing Gothics covered in snow and everywhere else, fantastic. Time to eat some food. Again, easily the most physically demanding half a mile I've ever experienced hiking. And I had it easier than John and Brian. But once up top, we layered up and ate a snack. I had a Snickers bar and ate some of the chips that I had to get some more salt in me in an attempt to stop the cramping. The views from the summit of Pyramid are, in my humble and ultimately meaningless opinion, the best views of the day on this range. The way the mountain sits right in front of the slides on Gothics is particularly awesome. It also has a nice view of the whole range and what's in store for you for the rest of the day. At this point, I said to myself, okay, I have to get to Gothics, and then I'll decide if I'm going to carry on to the end. So we broke trail down Pyramid toward Gothics. This trail, summit to summit, is only 0.4 miles, so I knew in my head it wasn't going to be that bad, and thankfully it really wasn't. I led the group to start, and as we went down this trail, the snow was still 12 to 20 inches deep, depending where you were. And the snow had that nice light ice layer on top that's very physically and very emotionally pleasing when you step on it, and it cracks the way it does. It's just like that light crack. You know what I'm talking about. It was wonderful. And it was shockingly fast how quickly we got off Pyramid and into the col, and we were able to turn around and look back at Pyramid way above us. From here, we could see the last climb up to Gothics in front of us. Brian went first, followed by Kira. I watched as they started climbing, and I was stoked to see the snow holding up as well as it was. I knew this was the final big climb to Gothics, and I also knew, okay, if my legs can make it up this without issue, the hardest part of the day is over and I'm good. If my legs keep destroying me, I think I'm going to need to bow out down the Beaver Meadow Trail. So I started climbing the open, windy ridge up to Gothics, and thankfully the cramping was minimal. Occasional, but minimal. And everything was working the way it should be for the most part. And then before I knew it, we were walking along the summit of Gothics, and then we were at the top. I was stoked. 8:23 a.m. I was standing on Gothics for the third time in my life up in the fast-moving clouds. It was exactly what you'd picture from a tough winter hike. But we made it up. Gothics, number 3 of 6 for the day, and the 10th tallest high peak, standing 4,736 feet in the dark, gloomy Adirondack winter sky. It's 8:23. We made it to the top of Gothics. It was quite a struggle for me. Props to Jonathan and Brian for pretty much breaking out the whole trail from Sawteeth over Pyramid and up to Gothics. Wind is whipping up here. We're in the clouds, but there are some views down below. Pretty nice, but we made it up here. I was feeling okay at this point. Definitely not good or even what I'd classify as normal, but I didn't feel pyramid bad, as I'll now refer to it in my head moving forward. Just a simple okay. I feel okay. So that was a positive. We all layered up for the summit before we started the final ascent up that last climb up to Gothics, and Jonathan went and took some photos all along the summit while Kira, Brian, and I hung out together at the top. I assume Jonathan took photos anyways. You know, once he walked about 20 feet away from us, we couldn't see him anymore in the clouds, so that's what I assume he did, though I don't really know. At this point, I decided that I'm feeling okay, and to me, okay is good enough to carry on. And after about 15 minutes, we carried on along the ridge trail towards Armstrong, which is just over a mile away and probably the easiest portion of the day. As we made our way over the long, open ridge of the summit of Gothics, we walked along the top of what was basically a giant snowbank on the summit, which Jonathan told us is actually called a cornice. So I learned that today. A cornice, spelled like the food corn and ice, is defined as an overhanging mass of hardened snow at the edge of a mountain precipice. So, now you know too. After we made our way over the summit ridge of Gothics, we got back into the woods and started our descent into the col, slushing our way through snow that was, for better or worse, a broken out trail with light fresh snow on top. So it was a real breath of fresh air at this point. Not long into the hike to Armstrong, we were in the col at the Beaver Meadow Trail split at 9 o'clock and decided to stop and get some food in us and take a real break since it's a great spot. This col was cool the way it sits under Gothics, and it's a good-sized open col with bare trees all around us covered in snow. It was also now or never to head down the Beaver Meadow Trail back to the lake road. But I carried on because I knew I was okay to finish out, and from here the day got better and better, thankfully, and the cramps were gone, and now it was simply the usual wear and tear hiking brings. You know, the occasional knee soreness or the occasional bottom of your foot pain. You know, the usual. After we left the col, it's only a simple 0.5 mile, 100 feet elevation gain trek to the summit, so this took no time at all, as you could imagine. A short little climb here and there, but nothing strenuous. And then we came out onto the rock ledge and the phenomenal views this mountain has to offer at 9:38 a.m. This peak was my halfway point on my own 46er journey, so I'll always have a soft spot for Armstrong Mountain. All 4,400 feet of it. You got your high heels on. Don't fall off the ledge, Jonathan. It is 9:38. We made it to the top of Armstrong. Clouds at the tops of all the mountains, but nice views down below. Pretty awesome. Nice and cold and nice and windy. We had a lovely lunch at the Cole between Gothics and Armstrong. Don't tempt fate. Don't toy with that. Great time here on Armstrong. 2 more to go. The view on Armstrong is great, especially the way the ledge sits on the foreground with the mountains behind it in the background, kind of feeling like a 3D element in front of a fake backdrop or a green screen like I'd see at work on a TV show or a movie stage, except it's not fake and it's actually real, and it's amazing. Much more real than the fake personas that Hollywood actors try to portray themselves as being in the media, when in real life most of them are disgusting monsters of human beings. What? Hollywood actors are the fakest people on the planet? What? What did he say? Anyways, peak number 4 of 6 on the day is in the books and I'm feeling good now. So time to carry on the 1 mile over to Upper Wolfjaw, which is beautifully seen from Armstrong. This point into the hike was where I started to get nervous because I remember the last time I did this hike and remembered that one cliff climb between Armstrong and Upper Wolfjaw. There's a big ladder to aid in part of the climb, thankfully, but it's still a daunting little part of the hike nonetheless, and I didn't know what to expect today. The initial descent off Armstrong loses over 400 feet of elevation in only 0.2 miles, so it's a little steeper descent compared to the other parts of the day. And then we came to what Jonathan and I were positive was not the ladder climb. It couldn't be. This isn't it. I remember other things. I remember we were in the Cole, and then we would go over the trail over here, and this isn't it. Brian, however, was positive that it was. But, 2 against 1, so by basic math, it's proven that this is not that climb. We were wrong. Brian was correct. The ladder was just covered by multiple feet of pure ice and snow. This was indeed as difficult to get down as I anticipated it being, however. For me, anyways. Kira went first, Brian went second, Jonathan third, and then I went fourth. To get down this cliff-like section, we basically butt-slid from tree to tree, moving anywhere from 3 to 10 feet at a time, sliding down, then catching ourselves on the next tree with either our snowshoes or our hands, one by one, tree to tree to tree to tree, slow and steady. It was a challenge, slightly fun, probably would have been easier going up this portion than down, but slow and steady we each made it down okay without any issues, thankfully. But it was daunting when you first looked at it. This point, and for the rest of the day, the trail was fantastic, easy to follow, and well broken out, what I would dub an enjoyable winter hike. I know a lot of hardcore folks like being the ones breaking out these trails, and to them, I salute you. Thank you for your service. I and many others appreciate what you do. I will always choose to go on your already broken out, well-packed down trail. But that's just me. The trail was quick and we soon began the 0.2 mile, 200 feet of gain final hike up to the summit of Upper Wolfjaw. This was the type of moment where we made it to the trail sign just below the summit and I thought, oh wow, we're already there. Love when that happens. The mile went fast and it's not strenuous physically compared to the earlier part of the day. Once at the trail sign, we turned left and walked the few steps to the summit of Upper Wolfjaw, the 5th peak of the day, the 29th highest peak in the Adirondacks, standing 4,185 feet in the now sunny blue Adirondack sky. 10:45, we're up here on Upper Wolfjaw, which was probably the most delightful hike of the day so far, in my opinion. It's nice and sunny at the summit, no wind. Getting up here wasn't too bad. Pretty easy, thankfully. It's been a rough day physically on my end, so this was awesome. One more mountain to go. Of course, we still have to go over the hump to then go to Lower Wolfjaw, but we're on our way. So far, so good. Time to eat another sandwich. Yes, the sun was out. There were still clouds in the sky, but it was mostly sunny, and we were all enjoying the sunshine since we hadn't seen it yet today. And of course, it was only 10:45 a.m., but when you start hiking at 2 a.m., it felt like we haven't seen the sun all day, when in reality, the actual day is quite young at this point. But the sun felt fantastic. Good stuff. We dropped our packs and took in the scenery, enjoying the views of the Great Range in front of us and where we've been hiking today in particular. Not long after we were up here, a mutual friend of Jonathan and Kira named Tripp came onto the summit. John had been expecting to pass him at some point today because he and another guy were doing the Great Range Traverse today, which is super badass. If you're not familiar, the Great Range Traverse hikes up over 10 mountains, 8 of which are high peaks: Marcy, Haystack, Basin, Saddleback, Gothics.